The night the twin girls spoke those words, the hallway smelled of bleach and old rain, and the floor reflected the overhead lights like a thin sheet of ice. Their shoes were mismatched, their hair unevenly braided, and their small hands clutched the sleeve of a man in a janitor's uniform as if that cloth were the last solid thing in a world suddenly going soft beneath their feet. "Sir, my mom didn't come home." The words didn't echo, but they landed heavy, and a four-star general, accustomed to maps, briefings, and the weight of decisions that move thousands, felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. He didn't know why he stopped. He didn't know why he turned. He only knew that the man beside the girls was standing too still, the way someone stands when motion might cause everything to fall apart. If you believe that kindness and second chances can still change lives in a world that moves too fast to notice quiet pain, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel name. Your support helps stories like this reach the hearts that need them most. The janitor's name was Daniel, though few people ever asked. He worked nights because nights paid a little more and asked a little less. His hands were rough from years of cleaning floors that others walked across without seeing, and his back carried the kind of ache that comes from lifting not just trash bags, but responsibility. He was a single father to twins, Lily and Rose, and he had learned to live with a permanent hum of worry, rent, groceries, school shoes, doctor visits, yet nothing in his careful balancing had prepared him for the absence of a mother who didn't come home. Their mom, Elena, worked late shifts at a care facility across town. She had promised to bring takeout and laugh about the day. She had promised. Promises are supposed to be anchors, but that night, the anchor line snapped. The general, whose name was never announced in that hallway, watched the man kneel to the girl's level with a tenderness that felt practiced, not performative. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't rush. He wrapped his arms around them as if holding a fragile thing steady during a storm. The general had commanded troops in chaos and calmed rooms full of men trained to hide fear, yet this quiet moment pulled him in deeper than any briefing. He noticed the girl's eyes searching every face that passed, and the way Daniel's jaw set, not with anger, but with the kind of resolve that keeps a person upright when the ground disappears. Daniel had already called hospitals. He had already called Elena's supervisor. The answers came back thin and brittle. No record. No shift logged. No accident reported. He knew better than to panic, but fear doesn't wait for permission. He brought the girls to his workplace because he couldn't leave them alone, and because the building was warm, lit, and familiar. He planned to clean until dawn, then start again, calls, bus rides, waiting rooms. He planned because planning was how he survived. The general didn't offer help right away. He followed at a distance when Daniel pushed his cart down the corridor, the wheels squeaking a tired song. He followed because something about the man's careful movements reminded him of soldiers who carry more than their packs. He followed because leadership, he had learned, wasn't always about being seen. Sometimes it was about seeing. As the night stretched, the building settled into the kind of quiet that magnifies small sounds. Daniel wiped counters and emptied bins while the girls sat on a bench, whispering to each other and watching the doors. Every few minutes, one would look up, hopeful, and then look down again. Daniel felt the ache deepen, but he kept moving. He had learned long ago that stopping invited collapse. When the general finally approached, he didn't announce rank or purpose. He asked if the girls were okay. Daniel nodded, because nodding was easier than explaining the way his heart was trying to outrun his body. The general offered to make calls. Daniel hesitated. Pride is a strange thing, it can be both armor and weight. But the girl's eyes lifted, and Daniel nodded again, this time slower. Hours passed with no answers. Dawn thinned the dark. Daniel clocked out, thanked the general with a tired smile that carried more gratitude than words, and gathered the girls. He planned to take the bus to Elena's workplace, then to the police station, then wherever hope pointed next. The general watched them leave and felt a decision settle, the way decisions do when they are already made before you name them. He followed. He followed not in uniform, not with sirens or authority, but with patience. He watched Daniel navigate a system that asks for forms when you bring fear. He watched the girls sit quietly in plastic chairs, swinging their legs, whispering about what they would tell their mom when she came back. He watched Daniel listen to explanations that sounded like walls. And he recognized the familiar shape of a mission forming, not to command, but to accompany. When the police finally confirmed that Elena had been involved in an accident late the night before, relief and terror arrived together. She was alive, they said. Injured, they said. Transferred, they said. Daniel closed his eyes and pressed his forehead to his hands. The girls exhaled like balloons finally allowed to deflate. The general felt the room tilt back toward level. The hospital was bright and smelled of antiseptic and coffee. Elena lay still beneath white sheets, bruised but breathing. Daniel took her hand and felt the tremor beneath her skin, the small proof of life that carried the weight of a miracle. The girls stood on either side, their hands resting on the bed, their faces solemn with relief. The general stood back, understanding that some moments don't belong to anyone else. Recovery would take time. Time meant money. Money meant work. Daniel did the math in his head and felt the familiar squeeze. He picked up extra shifts. He slept less. He smiled when the girls needed him to smile. He learned the routes between school, hospital, and work until they stitched into muscle memory. He did not complain. The general returned to his world of briefings and schedules, but the memory of the hallway lingered. He asked questions. He listened. He learned that Daniel had once worn a uniform 2 years ago, until life pulled him elsewhere. He learned about skills quietly acquired, about leadership practiced in kitchens and classrooms instead of battlefields. And he understood that service takes many forms, some of them mops and time cards and hands held steady in the night. Weeks later, when Elena was stable and the girls had settled back into routines, Daniel was called into an office he had never entered before. He expected a reprimand for bringing his children to work. Instead, he found the general waiting, not with medals or speeches, but with an offer shaped like opportunity. A role that paid better. Hours that fit a family. Training that respected experience, even when that experience wasn't neatly labeled. Daniel listened. He weighed pride against need, fear against hope. He thought of the hallway, the night, the way a stranger had seen him. He accepted. The change didn't come all at once. It came like dawn, slow, almost imperceptible, until suddenly there was light. The girls grew more confident, their laughter louder. Elena healed, carrying scars that reminded them all of how close loss had come. Daniel learned new skills, mentored others, and discovered that the steadiness he had practiced in private was a strength others recognized. The general never asked for thanks. He watched from a distance as Daniel stood taller, not because of the job, but because someone had trusted him. Leadership, he reflected, is not only about orders given, it is about burdens shared. If this story has touched your heart, if you felt the quiet power of being seen when you're carrying more than anyone knows, please take a moment now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel name. Your engagement tells us these stories matter. And before we reach the end, we have a special request. Please comment below with a single word that this story stirred in you. Sometimes one word is enough to remind someone they're not alone. Years later, Daniel would still clean floors from time to time, not because he had to, but because it grounded him. He taught his daughters that dignity isn't tied to titles, and that help can come from unexpected places. The general would still walk hallways, attentive to the quiet corners, listening for the moments that don't announce themselves. And somewhere between a promise broken by circumstance and a promise kept by kindness, a family learned that even on the longest nights, someone might stop, turn, and follow, not to lead the way, but to walk beside you until morning.